Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Viewers. My name is Taj Mahmood. I am a foundation level student at the School Islamabad campus. So viewers, today I am here with a new ChatGPT topic named conscience present the evolution of experience. So let's get start ChatGPT. Hello ChatGPT, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for asking. I hope you are too. Let me know if there's anything in particular on your mind today.
ChatGPT, listen me. My first question is what is the earliest from a conscious of sense and living origins?
That's a fascinating question. In the context of living organisms, the air we breathe is mostly composed of nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and some other trace gases. And when we look at the Earth's atmosphere, it's about 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen, with the rest being made up of other gases. If you meant something more specific, definitely let me know.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is how might conscience have evolutions of basic components purpose?
Oh, that's a really interesting topic. Over time, human preferences for certain traits in plants and animals have definitely influenced evolution. For example, when we domesticate plants, we often select for traits like bigger fruits, better taste, or easier harvesting, and that leads to changes in the genetic makeup of those plants. It's a really cool interplay between human culture and natural selection.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is did self-arise gradually or a segment an evolution story?
Absolutely. In many ways, the concept of self-awareness in humans has evolved gradually over thousands of years. As our brains grew more complex, we started to develop more sophisticated cognitive abilities like reflection, theory of mind, and a sense of identity. And culturally, as we developed language and storytelling, we were able to share and refine those ideas. So it's definitely a gradual and fascinating journey.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is how does effects of definite aspects in smiles life from like sweaters?
That's a wonderful question. In general, when we think about success, it's often about achieving personal goals, feeling fulfilled, and having a sense of purpose. And that can definitely lead to a better quality of life because it brings happiness, reduces stress, and improves overall well-being. Plus, when we feel successful, we often build stronger relationships and have a more positive outlook on life.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is how might prediction of social media and conscience and extreme unconscious?
That's a really intriguing topic. Social media definitely influences both our conscious and unconscious minds. Consciously, we curate what we share, we engage with content, and we shape our identities. Unconsciously, though, social media can influence our emotions, our behaviors, and even our thought patterns through things like algorithms, notifications, and the constant stream of information. Over time, that can shape our beliefs, our preferences, and even our subconscious responses. It's definitely a deep and complex interaction.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is are reflex action payments and version when experience began?
That's a really thought-provoking question. In a sense, the roots of love and romantic connections go way back to early human societies. As humans evolved, those emotional bonds likely began as essential for survival, like forming strong family units and cooperative groups. Over time, as cultures and societies grew more complex, our understanding and expression of love became richer and more nuanced. So it's definitely an ancient and evolving part of the human experience.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is can identity aspects differ between experience and invention?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Generally, when we talk about the expression of identity, it's often more visible and outward facing, like how we present ourselves, the way we dress, our social media profiles, and the behaviors we display. On the other hand, our inverse identity is more about the inner self, the aspects that are less visible and more private, like our inner thoughts, our values and emotions. So in essence, the expression is more external and the inverse is more internal.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is what role does the reflex system play in the evolution of ranching?
That's a really cool question. The reflex system definitely plays a crucial role in the evolution of living beings. Reflexes are essentially automatic responses to certain stimuli, and they help organisms survive by reacting quickly to danger or other important stimuli. Over time, these reflexes would have been naturally selected for because they increase an organism's chances of survival. And as these reflexes became more complex and refined, they contributed to the evolution of more advanced nervous systems and behaviors. So reflexes definitely laid the foundation for more complex responses.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is what trend restriction are antigens of conscious experience?
That's a really fascinating topic. Generally, when it comes to consciousness, trends or patterns can include things like heightened awareness during certain activities like mindfulness or meditation, and even shifts in consciousness due to things like sleep cycles, stress, or even certain substances. Another pattern is how our consciousness can become more fragmented or focused depending on what we're doing. Overall, it's a blend of biological rhythms, environmental influences, and psychological factors that shape how we experience.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is how do different spirits, brains reflect varying level of experience?
Great question. So when we talk about different levels of experience, we often have more basic instinctual experiences at a lower level, like immediate sensory perceptions. And then as we move up, we get more complex and reflective levels like self-awareness, abstract thinking, and deeper emotional experiences. So the higher levels of experience tend to involve more reflection, integration of complex thoughts, and a richer sense of self. It's kind of like a spectrum with basic immediate experiences at the bottom and more complex reflective experiences at the top.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is what is the relationship between natural complexity and conscience?
That's a really intriguing relationship. In general, as natural complexity increases, like in more intricate nervous systems or more complex brain structures, there tends to be a greater capacity for consciousness. Basically, more complexity allows for richer and more nuanced experiences, deeper self-awareness, and more complex thought processes. Of course, it's not just about complexity alone. It also depends on how that complexity is organized and how information is processed. But in general, there's a strong link between complexity and the depth of conscious experience.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is can experience exist without a brain as an experience system or heterogeneous integrated?
That's such an interesting question. Generally, experience and consciousness are closely tied to a nervous system or a brain that can process information. For something like a hydra, which is a simple organism, it has a rudimentary nerve net, other than a centralized brain. And while it can respond to stimuli and show simple behaviors, it doesn't have the same kind of rich subjective experience we associate with more complex animals. So, in short, while simple organisms can have basic responses, the kind of rich, complex experience we usually think of as consciousness typically requires a more advanced nervous system.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is how does sleep affect the study of experience evolution?
That's a really cool angle. Sleep definitely plays a huge role in shaping our conscious experiences and even our evolution. During sleep, our brains consolidate memories, process emotions, and clear out unnecessary information. This not only helps with cognitive function, but also influences how we process and integrate experiences, which can drive the evolution of more complex conscious states. Over time, the patterns of sleep and the quality of rest could have helped shape our cognitive abilities and even our awareness. It's definitely a fascinating connection.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is uh, are animals capable of a meta-conscious thinking about think paint?
That's a really intriguing question. So when it comes to animals, some definitely show signs of meta consciousness, like self awareness, problem solving, and even some reflective thinking. For example, certain primates, dolphins, and elephants can pass the mirror test, which shows self recognition. And some animals, like certain birds and mammals, can plan for the future or understand that others have their own perspectives. It's definitely a spectrum, and while animals might not have the same level of meta consciousness as humans, many do have fascinating and complex awareness in their own ways.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is what can express brain research tells us about the nature of conscience?
That's such an interesting angle. When we look at brain activity during different states like stress or relaxation, it can really reveal a lot about consciousness. For instance, stress often activates areas of the brain related to the fight or flight response, which can narrow our awareness and make us more reactive. On the other hand, when we're relaxed, we often see more balanced brain activity, like increased activity in areas associated with creativity and introspection. By studying these patterns, we can learn how different mental states shape our conscious experience and how flexible and dynamic consciousness really is.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is how does memory concentrate to experience and edit really?
That's a great question. Memory definitely plays a huge role in shaping our conscious experience and our identity. Essentially, our memories help us create a continuous narrative of who we are, which gives us a sense of self. Or we recall past experiences, it shapes how we perceive the present and even how we anticipate the future. In that way, memory and experience are deeply interconnected, and together they help us build a coherent sense of identity and consciousness.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is what nature simulates exit between humans and others, sulfate, steroid, spice like developers or a pace.
That's a fascinating area of exploration. In many ways, there are some really interesting parallels. For example, both humans and other self-aware animals like dolphins or great apes show signs of self-recognition, problem solving, and even some form of cultural learning. Also, when it comes to brain development, there are similarities in how complex neural networks form, how social interactions shape learning, and how experiences influence cognitive development. So even though the specifics can vary, the underlying principles of development and self-awareness do have some common threads.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is conscious spirit and boundless pecans or springs behind matters?
That's a really neat question. In a lot of ways, the way we perceive and understand the world definitely influences how we categorize and interpret things like colors, shapes, and even abstract concepts. When we look at how different species perceive the world, like birds or insects, we can see that their sensory systems are often tuned to different wavelengths or patterns. This means that their experience of reality can be quite different from ours. And in terms of how we interpret things, our brains are wired to create meaning from what we see and experience. And that definitely shapes how we understand and label things. It's a really cool intersection of perception, cognition, and even culture.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is how have physiology views of conscience evolved over centuries?
That's a really intriguing topic. Our physical views, like our beliefs and perspectives on the world, definitely influence how we interpret sensory information. For instance, if we have certain expectations or cultural influences that can shape how we perceive things like color, sound, or even time, our senses are not just passive receivers, they're also influenced by our mental frameworks. So, in a way, our physical views and our sensory experiences are constantly interacting and shaping each other. It's a beautiful blend of mind and body.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is what does distance courtier eroge? Some tell us about awareness.
That's a really thought-provoking question. Dissociation can actually reveal a lot about the nature of awareness. In states of dissociation, the usual integration of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions can become disrupted, and that can show us how flexible and multi-layered our conscious experience really is. For example, when someone dissociates, they might feel detached from their body or surroundings, and that can highlight how much of our awareness depends on the integration of different sensory and cognitive processes. It also shows how our sense of self can be dynamic and sometimes fragile. So dissociation really gives us a unique window into the complexities of awareness.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is can physiology the ideas that all matters has conscience explains awareness?
That's such a deep and fascinating question. The idea that all matter has some form of consciousness or at least a fundamental awareness is explored in some philosophical and even some scientific perspectives like panpsychism. The idea is that consciousness might not be limited to complex brains, but could be a fundamental property of the universe present even in the tiniest particles. If we think about it that way, then awareness could be seen as an emergent property that becomes.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. Listen, me. My next question is how did weights and physicality differ and explains concept?
That's a great question. So in general, reflexes are automatic, involuntary responses to specific stimuli. They happen really quickly and don't involve conscious thought. On the other hand, consciousness involves awareness, reflection, and intentional thought. While reflexes are more about immediate mechanical responses, consciousness allows for more complex processing like integrating memories, making decisions, and self-reflection. So in essence, reflexes are more about immediate instinctive actions, whereas consciousness is about deeper reflective awareness.
Okay, ChatGPT, my next question is what is the hard problem of conscience purported by diverse claimers?
Absolutely. The hard problem of consciousness, as coined by David Chalmers, refers to the challenge of explaining why and how subjective experiences arise from physical processes in the brain. In other words, even if we understand all the neural mechanisms and how they work, the hard problem is about why it feels like something to be conscious. It's the difference between knowing the mechanics and understanding the actual experience of awareness. It's a really profound and intriguing puzzle in the philosophy of mind.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is inconscience and sphere created by the brain.
That's a really interesting area of exploration. In general, our brain plays a huge role in generating and shaping our consciousness. Our perceptions, thoughts, and emotions all emerge from complex neural networks and chemical processes. So, in a sense, our subjective experience is deeply intertwined with how our brain functions. And while we still have a lot to learn, it's clear that the brain's activity is fundamental in creating and sustaining what we call consciousness.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is does free will depends on begins on sense?
That's a really thought-provoking question. in many ways, the idea of free will and the role of our brain is a complex interplay. Our brains definitely shape our decisions, perceptions, and even our impulses. However, many philosophers and scientists believe that free will might still emerge from complex brain processes where we integrate information, reflect, and make choices. So while the brain does influence our decisions, many still argue that there's room for genuine agency or free will. It's definitely a fascinating philosophical and scientific debate.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is how does physics operate the study of subject experience?
That's a great question. In studying subjective experience, rest plays a really important role. When we're rested, our brain functions more efficiently and our perceptions and reflections tend to be clearer and more stable. On the other hand, when we're fatigued, our subjective experience can become more fragmented, less consistent, and more prone to biases. So rest is crucial for maintaining a stable and reliable awareness, and it definitely helps us understand the nuances of subjective experience more deeply.
Okay, ChatGPT, my next question is can matching ever exceed true consent?
That's a really fascinating question. Meditation definitely has the potential to influence our conscious experience in profound ways. It can help cultivate a heightened awareness, improve mindfulness, and even promote a deeper sense of presence. Over time, meditation can help us become more aware of our thoughts, emotions, and sensory experiences, often leading to a clearer and more balanced state of mind. While it might not completely transform every aspect of consciousness, it definitely can deepen and enrich our subjective experience in meaningful ways.
Okay, ChatGPT, my next question is how does human self conscience differ from animals' conscience?
That's a really intriguing question. One of the main differences is the complexity and depth of human consciousness. Humans have a highly developed capacity for self-reflection, abstract thinking, and complex language, which allows us to ponder our own existence, create intricate cultures, and imagine future possibilities. Animals, on the other hand, certainly have their own forms of consciousness, but it's often more centered on immediate sensory experiences, survival instincts, and more immediate needs. Of course, there's a spectrum, and many animals show remarkable intelligence and awareness in their own ways, but human consciousness is distinctive in its complexity and depth.
Okay, ChatGPT, my next question is what is the role of language in shaping conscience?
That's a really fascinating topic. Language plays a huge role in shaping consciousness because it gives us a structured way to organize our thoughts, communicate complex ideas, and reflect on our own experiences. Through language, we can categorize the world, express abstract concepts, and share experiences across time and space. This ability to label and describe our inner and outer worlds definitely influences how we perceive and understand reality. So, in essence, language is a powerful tool that deeply shapes our conscious experience.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is how do culture and social factors influence events?
That's a really interesting question. In many ways, culture and social factors deeply shape our conscious experience by influencing our beliefs, values, and perceptions. The culture we grow up in gives us frameworks for interpreting the world, forming our identity, and guiding our behaviors. At the same time, social interactions and norms shape how we think, feel, and respond to different situations. So essentially, our consciousness is a dynamic blend of individual experience and cultural context. It's a really rich interplay.
Okay, ChatGPT, nice answer. My next question is how does meditation alter or influence conscious status?
That's a wonderful question. Meditation can really influence consciousness in profound ways. For one, it can help calm the mind, reduce mental chatter, and enhance present moment awareness. Over time, regular meditation can lead to greater self-awareness, improved emotional regulation, and even a deeper sense of connection to oneself and the world. Essentially, meditation can help refine and expand our conscious experience, making it more clear and more balanced. It's definitely a powerful tool for altering and
Okay,
enriching.
ChatGPT. Nice answer. My last question is moral experience a unique from of human conscience?
That's a really thoughtful question. Well, humans definitely have a unique capacity for complex moral reasoning. Many animals also share elements of moral behavior like empathy, cooperation, and fairness. However, human moral expression is often more complex and abstract, influenced by culture, language, and philosophical thought. We tend to have more nuanced moral frameworks, including abstract principles like justice
Okay,
and
ChatGPT. Allah Hafiz. तो बस ये थी हमारी आज की ChatGPT। तो मुझे आपको पसंद आई कि तो मिलते हैं किसी और ChatGPT के साथ। अल्लाह हाफिज। पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद।